Hey, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to just make a time lapse of me drawing. I'd just seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, so I figured it would be pretty fitting to draw the entire gang while I was still hyped from seeing the movie. I'm going to be jumping in and out with some commentary to try and explain my thought process and the supplies I'm using to make this, so hopefully this video provides, at least some educational value. As with most drawings, I begin in the sketching phase. I'm only really using a standard number 2 pencil here. You could alternatively just use a mechanical pencil, but the standard wooden pencils are a bit more versatile in my opinion, because you can sharpen them to a fine point or wear them down to a soft edge. Whereas with mechanical pencils, you're sort of locked into a sharp point. You can see that it's looking pretty rough right now. In this stage, I'm not really too worried about detail or anything like that. My main goal here is to frame the piece in an appealing way and to really nail the character poses. This might seem kind of trivial, but it really is the most important step in the process in my opinion. Think of it like constructing a building. If your foundation is bad, then your final piece with all the color and whatnot on top of it is going to be sort of lacking. So it's really critical to take your time here and make sure everything looks the way you want it to. After all, you can erase and fix your mistakes here, but once we move forward to inking, you can't really look back. Eventually, I begin erasing a lot of my sketch work completely so that I can replace it with really crisp pencil work. I didn't want there to be any ambiguity in the lines to make inking a little bit easier on myself. Something I personally like to do while drawing bigger illustrations like this is to jump around the page and draw different things instead of just doing a single character at a time. I feel that this helps retain motivation and can also be a nice change of pace if I'm stuck on a particular area for a while. So here's where a ruler comes in handy. I'm doing some lettering here and I'd really like the letters to look as professional as possible. To do this, I'm making a large rectangle as a guide and breaking it up into smaller sections that correspond to letters. And I think the first time I did this I accidentally made the wrong number of boxes, but I caught it luckily. Like I said before, I really don't want there to be any confusing or extraneous lines in my sketch, so I'm going in here one final time to make sure each character is outlined as clearly as possible. As you can see, Peter's hair gave me quite a bit of trouble. I think I worked on it for like an hour or something in real time, but luckily this video is sped up for you. Now that I've finally settled on my line work, I move on to inking. To ink, I'm using Sakura Pigma Micron pens, size 01 and 03 for finer details, and size 05 and 08 for thicker outlines and boldening any darker areas of the piece. I'm also using a ruler again, as well as the circle tracer thing. The ruler and the tracer thing are optional, but I like to use them to make my shapes look a little bit more professional. It's important to always keep in the back of your mind that ink is permanent, so your line work should be deliberate and careful. That being said, don't be too shy with it, because timid line work is usually pretty apparent. For example, your lines may be really shaky if you draw unconfidently. Being confident in your lines results in more consistent and smooth lines, which is really what you want. What I like to at least do before I start inking is just try out all my pens. Put down a few lines to warm up and also gauge how thick each line is. And speaking of line thickness, line variation is also something to keep in mind. I'm not necessarily the best at it, but I like to keep it basic by inking an entire piece with a size 01 or 03 pen first, then switch to a size 05 pen to thicken any lines that aren't fine details. Probably not the best way to go about it, but it does provide a systematic way to get some variation in your lines. You can see me come in here and erase any stray pencil lines I didn't ink, but I'm also strangely erasing areas that are completely blank. The thing about pencil is that it smudges, so really what should be white on the paper is kind of a washed out gray because of the pencil. I'm erasing the gray so that the white on the paper can show through and really contrast the black ink. And now I'm coming back in with my size 05 and 08 pens to add some dark shadows. I figured using bold black shadows would be fitting since Western comics generally utilize this type of shading. And the Guardians were comic book characters first after all, so yeah. Finally, onto my favorite part, coloring. To start off, I decided to color the background first so that I could have an idea of how to effectively account for lighting effects on the characters. The movie poster for Guardians had a galaxy as its background, and I really liked how it looked, so I decided to go with a galaxy for my own piece's background. For the background, I'm using Copic markers BV13, BV17, B91, B99, B000, BG07, R43, and RV55. I'm pretty much exclusively using the brush tip here as opposed to the super fine point because I want there to be soft edges and smooth gradients between the colors. It is outer space after all. To add stars, I'm using BiC Wite-Out, the liquid kind, and I'm just flicking it onto the illustration using a piece of paper. I was going to cut out a piece of paper to cover the characters while I did this, but I was a bit too lazy to even bother. But I still think it turned out alright. Oh, and I also used a Uni-ball Signo broad gel pen to add in smaller stars in a more controlled manner. With the background done, I moved on to the characters, starting with Rocket. For Rocket's fur, I'm using E50 and E11 to put lighter tones, and E13, BV17, C7, and BV25 for darker areas. His clothes are a mixture of blues B39, B99, and B95, and his belt and sort of shoulder brace are dark brown made with E18 and E47. I wanted his gun to be really bright and colorful to contrast his darker tones, so I made it a really nice, vibrant yellowish orange. I used YR12, Y35, and YR68 for the main base color, and used BV25, C2, and C7 to put in the shadows and metallic tones. Next, I started work on Peter. For his helmet, I used C4 and BV25 for the metallic areas, and for the yellow areas, I used Y35, YR12, and YR04. Finally, for the eyes, I just used a few basic reds, R43, R46, and R89. For his jacket, I used R08, E09, and R89. Basically just some brownish reds as opposed to straight up brown to keep with the vibrant color motif. Peter's pants are just a basic dark blue, so I used B99 and went over it with BV25 to give it a sort of gray undertone. For his belt I used E09, E18, and E47. Gamora is, of course, green, so for her skin I used YG03, YG06, and G43. She has dark brown hair with red highlights at the bottom, so for the brown color I used E18 and E47. For her highlights I used R43, R46, and R89. I also used BB25 to provide shading on the darker areas of her hair. For her jacket I used E09, E18, E47, and BB25. She has this sort of inner chest plate thing that's all black, so I just used C4 and BB25 to make it seem a little metallic. Her pants were colored using BB25 and C4. I also used the purples BB13, BB17, and BB25 to color her belt. I went in to color Drax's skin with B000 and BG01 as the base color, and went back in again with B91 and B95 for shadows. His tattoos are reds R46 and R89. I made his pants gray using BB17 and BB25. To color his belt, I used C4 and BB25. Finally, I colored Baby Groot using browns E11, E13, and E18, as well as greens G43 and YG06. The drawing looks pretty much done at this point, but there is one more step that I typically do, and I like to call it just cleanup or maybe refinement or something, I don't really know. Basically, what I do here is make sure the smaller details are really as tight as they can be. I use the white gel pen again to drop in a few highlights, then I re-ink a few areas where I feel the ink got a bit washed out from the markers. In my opinion, this step is really important to finishing a piece strong, so really don't neglect it. And that's about it for my commentary. So I like to tape my movie tickets to the back of my movie themed artwork, and you can see that's what I do here. And yes, there's 3 tickets because I saw the movie 3 times, and yes, one of them says Alien because we went to see Alien Covenant, but snuck into Guardians 2 instead. So anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this was somewhat informative, and I'll see you later.
I don't hear any music. Okay, let me do it for you.
I turned it off in case you're gonna talk.
Do 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 do. Bye, Luke.
Bye. Oh my god.